Tonight on Newshour, Donald Trump arrives in Britain for his second state visit. Touching down this evening, the American president steps into a capital preparing for ceremony, protest and high-stakes politics. Well, the itinerary is carefully staged. A ceremonial welcome with King Charles at Windsor Castle, talks with Prime Minister Keir Starmer at Chequers, the PM's official country residence, of course, a state banquet designed to capture global headlines, and behind it all, Washington insists more than $10 billion in trade and defence deals will be announced. But this visit is about far more than contracts. UK police say they are prepared for every eventuality as protests are organised for both London and Windsor. Supporters too are mobilising, framing Trump as a defender of sovereignty and free markets. Meanwhile, the Guardian newspaper describes Starmer's recent dismissal of Lord Mandelson over his links to Jeffrey Epstein as a lingering scandal threatening to distract from the carefully choreographed diplomacy. So, as Britain rolls out the red carpet, the real question is whether this visit will cement alliances or expose divisions. Let's just take a look at how the next 3 days are planned to pan out.
The United States and Britain plan to announce more than $10 billion in economic agreements this week as part of President Donald Trump's state visit, senior US officials confirmed on Monday, September 15th. The visit, they say, is designed to showcase not only the pageantry of the special relationship, but also the depth of commercial and strategic cooperation. According to officials speaking on a telephone briefing, the two governments are expected to seal a trade package built around 3 central pillars: a new science and technology partnership aimed at strengthening the tech sectors of both countries, cooperation in civil nuclear power, and advances in defence technology. Each strand is intended to demonstrate that Washington and London remain tightly bound in areas of innovation, security, and long-term investment. Several prominent US technology executives are expected to be present during the visit, underscoring the significance the White House is attaching to the tech component of the agreement. Officials stressed that this partnership could open doors for joint research, greater investment flows, and new opportunities for startups on both sides of the Atlantic. Trump and First Lady Melania Trump are scheduled to arrive late on Tuesday the 16th. On Wednesday, they will be received by King Charles and Queen Camilla at Windsor Castle for a ceremonial welcome and a state banquet that evening. It will be the second time Trump has been honoured with a state dinner in Britain, the first taking place during his initial term in office in 2019. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer will then host the US President at Chequers, the Prime Minister's official country residence in Buckinghamshire, on Thursday. Talks there are expected to range from the Ukraine conflict to the global economy, with the aim of finalising promised reductions in tariffs on steel and aluminium imports. The leaders will also discuss energy security, defence procurement, and how to align policy on emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence and quantum computing. The day will culminate in a joint press conference before Trump returns to Washington later that night. The symbolism of Chequers, long used for hosting high-level foreign leaders, is expected to reinforce the message of continuity in Anglo-American relations despite political change in both capitals. For Britain, the visit offers a chance to position itself as a hub for investment and innovation in a post-Brexit landscape. For Washington, it provides a stage to reaffirm leadership and highlight that even amid global turbulence, the transatlantic relationship remains at the centre of American strategy.
Now let's cross to our correspondent Ollie Barrett, who is outside the official residence of the US Ambassador to the United Kingdom. Ollie, good to see you as always. We're seeing a heavy security presence, protests organised across the capital. How is London reacting to Trump's arrival? Is the mood defiant, divided, or simply just a bit wary of the spectacle?
Well, Guy, I think divided is the word. The polling suggests that Donald Trump is not a popular man in the UK, but it's more nuanced when it comes to views about the state visit taking place. 61% of people, according to a new Ipsos poll in the UK, don't like Donald Trump. But when you look at the attitudes towards this state visit, 48% of Britons believe that the Donald Trump state visit should be going ahead. Only 34% believe that it shouldn't be. 1/3 of Brits, around 34% according to Ipsos, say that they are supportive of protests against Donald Trump during this visit. 25% of people oppose those protests. And so, as I say, mixed views, and there certainly will be protests taking place here in London, but also in Windsor as well. We've seen protests already in Windsor today. This, where I'm standing, is the outskirts of Winfield House behind me, which is the US ambassador's residence in London, and where we expect Donald Trump to be staying on his first night in the UK. You can see behind me very, very strong security in place here. There will be very, very strong security in place in Windsor as well on Wednesday and Thursday when Donald Trump is there for that leg of the state visit. He's welcomed by King Charles at Windsor Castle on Wednesday, and there'll be tight security as well at Chequers on Thursday when he holds talks with Prime Minister Keir Starmer there. On Thursday, there are some potentially thorny issues to come up. For example, the Jeffrey Epstein scandal as it relates to the now former UK ambassador to the US, Peter Mandelson, but also the potential for questions about Jeffrey Epstein and his historic relationship with Donald Trump that could be raised at the press conference at Chequers as well, if that press conference indeed goes ahead. Issues around Gaza and Israel on which the UK and the US don't currently see exactly eye to eye. Ukraine is certainly going to be a key topic of discussions as well. Through the course of this week, though, business arrangements and deals being announced. We had a civil nuclear deal being announced on Monday. On Tuesday, Google's owner Alphabet announcing billions of dollars of investment in AI into the UK. And the UK government will point to those deals over the course of this week to make the case that absolutely it's the right thing to do to invite President Trump for this unprecedented second state visit to the UK. When it comes to Brits, as I say, very mixed views on Donald Trump, appearing to be broadly supportive of the idea that he should be here for a state visit, even if a majority of Brits don't personally currently like the US president very much. Guy.
Well, joining me now to discuss the implications of Trump's visit is Scott Lucas, Professor of US and International Relations at the Clinton Institute, University College, Dublin, based in Wicklow Island. Professor, always good to see you on Newshour. The White House then is touting $10 billion in deals. It sounds in one sense quite impressive, but in geopolitical terms, that's frankly pocket change, isn't it? Why do you think Trump is really in the UK? Is this visit about cementing economic ties or more about projecting power, symbolism, and controlling this narrative in Europe at a time when American influence is contested?
Well, the nice aspect of that is that Trump loves the pageantry in the UK, as you've been talking about it. He's a big admirer of the royal family. He, ironically, is someone who pretends to be, a politician for the common man. He likes to be part of elite society. We saw that in 2019 when he was feted by the royal family. We're seeing it again in 2025. So it's Trump's ego, if you want to talk about why he wants to be here. But there's a second reason which is not so nice. And that is there are those people around Trump who want to change British politics. They even want to change the UK government. We actually only saw this week a renewal of the attempt by Elon Musk, who of course was associated with Trump at one point, to pursue an overthrow of the UK government using his social media platform X. Trump's former chief strategist, Steve Bannon, has been campaigning to support the Reform Party, which was involved with the far-right protest that took place this past weekend in London. And perhaps most interestingly, J.D. Vance, the vice president, when he was here a few weeks ago, supposedly on vacation, met figures from Britain's hard right, including the Reform Party, to talk about promoting them, hoping, in fact, to get them into power, while at the same time, let's be honest, undermining the current Starmer government.
Very interesting indeed. There's an awful lot going on. Now President Trump is being given full honours at Windsor and Chequers. I mean, you mentioned this love he has for pageantry tradition. Yet Starmer faces the shadow of the Mandelson scandal at home, doesn't he? Does hosting Donald Trump enhance Britain's prestige then, or does it simply perpetuate this controversy that everybody is trying to avoid?
Well, first of all, this is a damage limitation exercise. I mean, you talked about all the economic supposed benefits, you know, the investment in technology, the investment in nuclear power. What wasn't mentioned there were Trump's tariffs. And although those have been proposed to be only 10% on the UK, first of all, any tariffs are damaging both on the US and on the UK. And secondly, that framework has not become a deal. There is still no agreement on getting rid of the 25% tariff on British steel and aluminium. There is uncertainty about whether the US might impose tariffs on the British pharmaceutical industry. So the UK government's hoping by flattering Trump, they limit the damage of the tariffs, and they hope they limit the damage of his uncertain position, even his chaotic position on UK and European security, which of course includes his spinning like a weather vane when it comes to the question of Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
And as NewsHour viewers will be familiar, we've been covering the pressure that Keir Starmer is under at home. And Trump, of course, a man that likes to dictate the narrative. Do you think that Keir Starmer here is projecting any statesmanship, or is Trump still dictating the narrative?
I mean, it'll be interesting to see what happens because, of course, Wednesday there are no, as it were, political events. That is all the pomp and ceremony out at Windsor Castle. And remember also that there are no events in London, partly to keep Trump away from any protest. So it's all going to happen on Thursday. Now, will Trump play nice at the joint press conference? Will Starmer succeed, as he did when he visited the White House in February, of charming Trump? Remember when he handed Trump that envelope,
yes,
which was the invitation to the state visit? Starmer is, for all his domestic problems, he's a very skillful lawyer. He's a very skillful event manager, if you will. And I'd be surprised if Trump goes ballistic on this one. I'd be more worried about those who are around Trump, who are feeding the British media, for example, around this false narrative that the Starmer government is curbing free speech. Because, of course, that narrative is both to whip up the issue of immigration and, secondly, to cover for the fact that they're promoting the Reform Party, which uses that free speech to actually be very, let's say, undermine responsible speech in the way they approach politics.
Yeah, it's interesting, Scott, because it is a narrative, whatever you think of it, is a narrative that has been fairly effective and delivered cut through in the media. Let's just look at security now. Now, security's been described as planned for every eventuality. What do the scale of the protests and the policing, what does that reveal about the state of political dissent and democracy in the UK, do you think?
Well, I don't think we're going to have large protests this week because we're in Windsor, and it's far different when you talk about mobile. There will be some protesters in Windsor, but it won't be the mass protests that you would have gotten in London. So although, you know, you obviously will have security which will be mobilized because it's the visit of a U.S. leader, the royal family is involved with this. I think the far more serious issue regarding security was that last Saturday, which was the protest led by the far right in London. And not only did you have those protests, when you had the counter protest, the Stop the Racism protest, you had the potential for confrontation here. You did have, I think, 25 people arrested from the far right for attacking police officers. That's not going to stop. There are two national UK networks that are allied with the Reform Party that are whipping up the idea of protest. And I have to be honest with you, by spreading misinformation about immigration. So I think we have an ongoing security issue in the UK where not all media outlets are responsible, and certainly not all political movements are being responsible in the way that they're addressing these issues.
Yeah, certainly very, very passionate issues on all sides of this. And as you say, unlikely for those passions to simply dissipate, to go quietly. Do you think there's a role, therefore, for the monarchy? I mean, we talked about President Trump's love for the pageantry, but do you think there's a particular effectiveness, something that the monarchy can do that other institutions can't when it comes to possibly stabilising situations, particularly when the public is wrestling with such divisive figures like Donald Trump?
I actually think the monarchy has a role to play here, but I think it actually goes beyond Trump. Now, there are reasons why the monarchy has been a bit reticent amidst this instability in the UK. First of all, you know that it is traditional that the king or queen does not get involved in politics. That's always a sensitive issue. Secondly, King Charles, of course, has health issues with cancer. But I think there is a point here where I think the monarchy needs to consider stepping in, because there are some elements here who are masking their protest by effectively saying, covering themselves in the English and the British flags. And they're launching attacks on other people in the UK for not being British or not being English. I personally would like to see the monarchy come out and talk about an inclusive Britain, a Britain with many people from many different backgrounds, many different racial backgrounds, many different ethnic backgrounds. I was an immigrant there for almost 40 years. Now, whether the monarchy will do that and call for inclusion at this point, or whether they think it's politically risky, well, my fear is that the tabloids will be concerned more with tittle-tattle about Prince William, Prince Harry, Kate, King Charles, rather than the serious issues which should include the monarchy being a stabilizing influence.
The UK, of course, no longer in the EU, but it remains a European country. Do you think European capitals across the continent are going to be watching closely? And could Trump's presence in Britain complicate Starmer's relationship with the EU, do you think?
I mean, first, I think Starmer actually has a mixed relationship with the EU. I think Starmer gets along with European leaders. I think they're trying to limit the damage of Brexit. But Starmer has handcuffed himself, not only by saying there will be no reversal of Brexit, but there will be no re-entry into the European single market. So that reconciliation is going to be limited in its practical effect. Europe will be watching especially closely here because of Ukraine, however. Your viewers will know that while Trump administration officials have been working with Europe and Ukraine to talk about sanctions on Russia, to talk about security guarantees, Trump spins like a weather vane, depending on whether he is giving the red carpet treatment to Vladimir Putin or whether he's getting upset with Russian attacks on Ukrainian civilians. The Europeans will be hoping that the UK can flatter Trump and keep him online with that issue of what is a gradual development of a more effective US involvement in European and Ukrainian security.
And obviously the president is a huge personality, arguably the most famous person in the world, someone that loves the limelight, loves the attention, loves to break rules at times. Part of the pageantry and the tradition surrounding this visit that he loves so much is actually about abiding by rules, putting the personality second, making sure that it's the institutions and the traditions that take centre stage. Do you think this might be a potential tripping point for the president?
It certainly was in 2019. Those of your viewers with a long memory will remember that when he did the walkabout with Queen Elizabeth II, he walked in front of her, charged off ahead of her. And that's a big violation of royal protocol. You always walk alongside the Queen. You don't charge up. Now, whether Trump simply forgot or didn't care about that, that's the potential that you have here. I personally think he'll behave himself. I mean, I think he'll be so intoxicated with the spectacle of it all. He'll think he's the big man on campus alongside the royal family. I don't see him fouling the nest with this visit, but he is Trump. So, you can't be sure of that.
And staying away from the personalities, just looking at the two countries for a minute, Scott, what do you think is the reality of this special relationship? We often hear this term, don't we, special relationship. We hear people say that it's still alive. Others deride it as being a phrase very much from the past. Is it a myth? Does it still exist? And if so, what form does it now take?
The special relationship is a myth which conceals a reality. I mean, in the sense that these are two countries that are particularly brought together by their love of each other. Nah. I mean, my parents, when I was growing up, the only thing they knew about England was Queen Elizabeth and a comedian named Benny Hill. A lot of Americans don't know that much about England, maybe Downton Abbey these days. But the reality has been, since World War II, is the links between the UK and the US institutions, economic institutions, intelligence services, State Department and Foreign Office, the militaries. And here's the irony. The biggest threat to those links between UK and US institutions is a guy named Donald Trump. Because in two ways. First of all, by his threats to step back from UK and European security, to the point at times of threatening to withdraw from NATO, and to his threat to the US government at this point, undermining the effectiveness of agencies. That's where the reality of the special relationship, if there is one, is under challenge, not by what happens over the next 2 days with all the glory, the pomp, and the circumstance.
And with all that, Professor, let's just look ahead. When we look back on this visit in weeks and months to come, what do you think will be the abiding memory of it? Will it be on the pomp, the ceremony, or will it be on the political tension that still isn't quite resolved?
News cycle moves on. So it depends on what happens with tariffs. It depends on what happens with Russia's invasion of Ukraine. It depends on what happens, which you mentioned, on the Epstein case, which will be an ongoing political problem for Trump, and whether it's raised this week. So, in this 21st century era, the thing about special events, even high profile events like this, is, to use a British phrase, well, today's news is tomorrow's chip paper. So I think we'll sort of pin this in terms of what's happened, but we'll be into different events and different challenges within a few weeks.
Yeah, I'm sure that's true. Professor Scott Lucas, always a joy to speak to you and to hear your analysis. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thanks to you and your viewers, Guy.
Okay, as Donald Trump then begins his second state visit, Britain braces for a week of ceremony, protests and political tension. With Windsor, Chequers and $10 billion in deals shaping the agenda, the stakes go far beyond economics. Well, that is all for this edition of NewsHour. From all of us here at AnewZ, thanks for being with us.